And you are listening to SCW, the wrestling podcast. Hi, my name is Steve, and I'm on my own for this very special edition of SCW, the wrestling podcast. This is episode 29. You are listening to us on SoundCloud, and feel free to like the SoundCloud page now, SCW, the wrestling podcast. Of course, as well, you can be listening to us on YouTube, on Steve Chats Wrestling, hashtag SCW. Make sure to subscribe to that channel right now. And as well as that, you can also like the Facebook page at the top of the search engine. Type in SCW, the wrestling podcast, and you can follow that by messaging me directly on Twitter at the SCW, the wrestling channel, at SChat Wrestling. It is as simple as that, and those are the means of medium form. Now, we're going to do something a little bit different and a little bit special today, because this is going to now be almost an examination, a feedback episode, if you will. I'm going to examine what I do on this episode. I'm going to split into 4 different parts, and I'm going to call this the 4 corners of SCW. So, in part 1 today, we're going to be talking about news outside of wrestling, and we're going to have part 2, where we're going to be talking about Raw itself. We're going to do a Raw Revisited, and a brief speak on SmackDown as well. Part 3 is going to be featuring Matt Hardy and Jeff Hardy, the final deletion. Of course, I've not given my comments on that yet, and it's seems to have gone viral, that. And part 4, we're going to be talking about WWE Draft in a creative form, once again, SCW Creative. So without further ado, we're going to kick off proceedings then with Brock Lesnar. We're going to be talking about SummerSlam, and we're going to be talking about his opponent. It's been pretty much officially revealed according to WrestleZone.com. Now, I've watched SmackDown from this week already, and there was no mention in the actual show itself, and it was reported on Tuesday that it was going to come up in some sort of vision kind of way, a visionette almost, because there was no discussion made of it on SmackDown or whatsoever. So, according to several fan reports, it was announced on Sportnet's Aftermath in Canada that Brock Lesnar would in fact face Randy Orton at WWE SummerSlam. Lesnar vs Orton has been one of those rumoured matchups since it was announced that Lesnar's opponent would be revealed this week. Now, related to this, Jim Ross comments on Brock Lesnar's rumoured SummerSlam opponent. He said that it should also be noted that SmackDown airs a day early in Canada and reveals reports made on the Aftermath show, not SmackDown. Announcement is expected to be revealed a tape segment on the USA Network broadcast of WWE SmackDown on Thursday evening. So there you have it. It seems now it's going to be Randy Orton. Now, I thought it was going to be Randy Orton. I'm going to give my viewpoint on this. I'm going to go through perhaps some of the potential other candidates there would have been. The reason for this is because I believe Randy Orton is due back around August SummerSlam time. It seems that perhaps as well that this is not going to have perhaps the build maybe we'd want for it. I don't exactly know when Orton's expected back on WWE, but Randy Orton is expected back in the Performance Center next week. So it looks like it's getting nearer and nearer to where he'll be back. And obviously, they want to do this match. This is a match they wanted to do before. I mean, Lesnar's contract runs out next April. It seems like the perfect time to do it because Orton, coming back from a long, lengthy injury, can come back wherever he wants in the card. He can be in the middle, he can be in the top, he can be just under the main event, and it will seem like it would work. So for me, this is a perfect time to make this match happen. Another reason why I think that this match works particularly as well is you look and say, well, who are the other rumoured opponents? Well, Kevin Owens was another person that was rumoured potentially that could be facing Brock Lesnar at SummerSlam, and for me, that just doesn't work because of the fact that currently at the moment, you look at Kevin Owens and you say, right, he's in a feud with Sami Zayn, and that's going to go through to Battleground. If we were to be announced this early that Kevin Owens was going to be the opponent at SummerSlam for Brock Lesnar, we would already know the outcome of the feud with Sami Zayn at Battleground. There'd be no need for this to happen because we know that for Kevin Owens to seem creditable, he needs to go on to bigger and better things for Brock Lesnar. He needs to beat Sami Zayn. So that keeps that kind of feud fresh if we want, and I think that goes the same with any other feud. Look at people like John Cena, AJ Styles, they're in a feud with each other. It doesn't make sense to make them fight with each other and then to fight Brock Lesnar if we know that they're already going to be facing Brock Lesnar afterwards, because we know then the outcome. It doesn't make sense to see, right, okay, so-and-so facing so-and-so, Lesnar's next, well, they're obviously going to win. So I think it ruled the entire WWE roster out that was currently involved. Now, there was potential that maybe it could have been an outside act, potentially. You look and say, well, what if someone like Kurt Angle was coming back and this was the way of announcing they were making a comeback to the company? Would have made sense. It could have worked. It would have been quite exciting because it's two fresh athletes that we've not seen in WWE for a while, someone making their return as well. Potentially it could have been a way to go, but I didn't see that happening. There's been a lot of squash rumours that Kurt Angle is definitely not coming back, particularly for the time being anyway, but it seems it's squashed that he'll be coming back at all in any sort of form of the near future right now. The other brand that I was looking at was potentially NXT, was potentially someone that could have had a match with Brock Lesnar. Now, you probably figure, well, who from NXT would come up? Well, there's expected to be many call-ups to the main roster for the WWE draft. Finn Balor, I mean, he needs something to do. That would be good for him to come into the main roster in a high-profile angle. What about Shinsuke Nakamura? Of course, Brock Lesnar has been in Japan wrestling before and has faced Nakamura before. It's something that you'd expect at some point we will see on WWE television, and it would be an exciting way to introduce these guys, and they are already seen as a big deal. They are perhaps main kind of talent. I mean, you look and think, right, okay, we did on this podcast last week, we did a mock of the draft and we had them in the top 10 or 12 picks. These guys were in it, so along with Brock Lesnar. So these guys are going to be a big deal on WWE TV when they are promoted. And you look at other people that have done their mock drafts as well, Vince Russo's and other people. These guys are picked quite early on in their drafts, so these guys are seen as a big deal. Now, whether it would work on the main roster with these coming up so soon and now, time will tell, but I believe that these guys will be on the main roster very soon. You can look and say, what about someone like Samoa Joe, Austin Aries, Bobby Roode? I don't think they're on the same level. Nakamura is seen as a big high property deal in WWE, same as Finn Balor as well. You know they're going to be onto big and better things in the main roster when they're promoted. They are not going to be wasted. They're not going to turn into a Vaudevillains or Ascension for say. So, I mean, that is it there. And for the match itself, how would I book it? Well, for me, personally, I would love to see Orton back on WWE the same night that Brock Lesnar returns. I don't know if he's going to be fit enough and well enough to do that at that stage, but you imagine if the match has been announced that this is clearly going to be happening and clearly both are going to be good to go. Depending on what happens with this Mark Hunt UFC fight, I would have Randy Orton come in and attack Brock Lesnar, saying he's making a mockery to wrestling. Particularly if Brock loses, I think that would be a great way to go. It would certainly build everything, because I don't see these two being in the same ring a lot or on TV a lot between now and SummerSlam either, so this could be pretty exciting. This also could lead to the fact as well, we're giving you an indication with the WWE draft, that potentially they could be on the same brand. So the chances are that if they are going to be picks, maybe they could be picks for Raw. It's just an idea at this time, but of course time will tell when it comes round to that. Now, we mentioned UFC a second ago, and of course, Brock Lesnar is facing Mark Hunt at UFC 200. We have learned in breaking news as well that this is now going to be the main event of UFC 200. This is a result of John Jones. He's out of Saturday's main event at UFC 200. The former UFC light heavyweight champion, who was scheduled to meet current champion Daniel Cormier in the main event at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, was pulled on Wednesday night due to a potential violation in the USADA drug test administered on June 16th. Now, in a hastily arranged Las Vegas press conference, UFC President Dana White has indicated that a new opponent from Cormier hasn't been ruled out. Maybe someone will pop up and fight Cormier at the last minute, but what we can say is that now that is going to be now the main event of the evening. It's still going to be 3 rounds between Lesnar and Hunt, so it's no different to what it was arranged before. It's just now going to be last on the card. Now, will Lesnar win it? It's hard to tell, really. I've spoken to some people who know a lot more about UFC than I do. I haven't seen a lot of UFC in the past, but I'm very interested in this. To be brutally honest, both fighters, I've seen their records. They've both won fights. They've both lost fights. Lesnar has not been in an octagon for many years now, so it's hard to see really if Lesnar's going to pick up the victory here, but you imagine if he wants to do this and go and do this, that he's going to be in good shape and the right sort of shape to do it. So I'm pulling for Lesnar. I hope he does it, but you have to remember the dangers that if he does lose, how bad this can look on WWE. He's been built at such a pedestal in WWE that now almost it seems like a damage that he could go into UFC and lose and almost have it all that work that WWE have done taken away by someone that's not even involved with WWE themselves. You'd expect that it was teed up for someone like a Roman Reigns to take it from him, or a new up-and-comer. But now, of course, if he loses at UFC, the question then goes back into WWE and says, will he then lose to Randy Orton? Time will tell. It's been very exciting indeed, but I will keep up to date with the UFC 200 fight, and I will provide a video for you on the YouTube channel, Steve Chats Wrestling, #SC. Right, we'll move on then in the meantime then for other bits of breaking news, WWE news potentially in this one. Now, could Prince Puma be heading to WWE, or Ricochet if you want. Now, he was on the Stone Cold Steve Austin podcast this week, and he was talking on it and saying how the Prince Puma character is a Lucha Underground character, so now he does not portray that character outside of Lucha. He is Ricochet outside, of course, at the famous match with Will Ospreay, which was heavily spoken about, which was done in Japan. There are rumours that he could go to WWE anyway, servicing towards the end of the year, at the start of next year. Ricochet has said there is the ultimate goal to be involved in WWE or NXT. Now, for me, it seems like a match made. It could go pretty well, especially with this Cruiserweight Classic that's now happening on the WWE Network. You think that maybe a Cruiserweight division could come in. I think this guy would be absolutely perfect, and I think he's got certainly a role. Could you imagine matches with Ricochet against the likes of Neville on WTV? It would be very exciting stuff to see indeed, and do you know what? I, for one, hope it happens. Moving on then to Sheamus next. Now at a WWE live event this past weekend, Sheamus was involved in a match where he was actually a face. Now, this has gone to rumours saying, will Sheamus actually be a face going forward? Now, of course, we've seen on WTV this week he's been a heel. He's had matches on Raw. He was part of Team International against Team USA. We'll be coming on to Raw in part 2, by the way, of this podcast, so check out part 2 straight after you finish listening to this one. But yeah, you look and say, right, okay, and then what about SmackDown? Well, he faced Zack Ryder on SmackDown, so he was the heel again. I would say at the moment this is obviously a teaser. WWE tests a lot of things out on live events, so it's not a promise that it will happen, but we have seen potentially Del Rio and Sheamus potentially having a small bit of altercation on Raw a couple of weeks ago. This could lead to a feud, and of course, if one of them is going to turn face, you have to hope this can be Sheamus in this particular moment. Now, Sheamus is a great natural heel. He's very good at his delivery. He comes across quite powerful, quite scary. You remember when he first debuted in WWE in 2009? He came across so dominant and a great dominant heel. Unfortunately, the way he's been booked in the last 12 months since coming back as a heel from being a long time face, the face seems stale and he needed the heel turn, but he's been booked so badly as a heel that now currently he's lost in the shuffle. It seems to make sense to me that we actually now see if we can make the change, because there is kind of nothing to lose. So for me, I think Sheamus in the long term hopefully will turn to a face once again, and potentially with a program with Del Rio. And I don't know about you, I wouldn't mind seeing a triple threat either between them two and Rusev, potentially for the US title, depending on how the WWE draft goes. But that is the end of part 1 of this particular episode. So if you like it, please hit a like button. Please leave in the comments of if you like the WWE news that comes out or other news that's coming on. Remember, there's 3 other sections of this podcast coming. We've got part 2, which you can check on right now, Raw Revisited, the highs and lows of Monday Night Raw this week. We'll touch on SmackDown as well. Going to have part 3, which will be Hardy versus Hardy, the final deletion, and then part 4, SCW Creative, which will be talking all about the WWE draft, what WWE should and should not do going into this draft, which is just less than 2 weeks' time. But thank you for checking this out. Remember to like all the pages. Remember, you're listening via SoundCloud, SCW The Wrestling Podcast. Hit the follow button now. You can do the same title on Facebook at the top of the search engine, SCW The Wrestling Podcast. Hit the like button now. We have the archive of all the old previous podcasts as well. YouTube, you listen to us on YouTube as well. Potentially you might not be on SoundCloud. This might be on YouTube.com. You're on Steve Chats Wrestling, hashtag SCW. Please hit the subscribe button right now. And of course you can message me directly on Twitter at SChat Wrestling, the SCW, the wrestling channel. So there you go, there you have it. Those are the places to follow, those are the places to find. So thank you very much for listening to part 1, and make sure to check out part 2 of episode 29 of SCW, the wrestling podcast, the 4 corners of SCW.